Welcome to episode 18 of the Tired Dad podcast. I think it's 18 anyway. With me, we have another dad, and we're going to do an interview and we're going to talk about his story, his background, and how hopefully he's going to share with us some great tips and some successes and how to navigate through his problem to a solution. So, first off, introduce yourself, introduce your family setup, and introduce where you're from.
I'm Jeremy Hammett. I'm here in Colorado. I've got my 4-year-old daughter. Actually, she will be 5 in another 2 months. So,
Yep. Time's going quick.
oh man, I tell you what,
So
he's 5 going on 14.
yeah. I've got an 8-year-old going on 18, man. They're funny but hard work. So okay, talk to me about your family setup at the moment.
So basically, what happened is, do you want me to start from the beginning?
You share what you want to feel
Okay.
you feel comfortable sharing.
I feel comfortable sharing everything.
Okay.
We essentially, my ex and I got together through motorcycles. We're big motorcycle riders.
Cool.
Started dating, decided to move in together, decided we wanted a child together.
Yeah.
Bought a house. She bought the house because it was just beneficial financially. It was better.
Yeah.
Had our baby, moved into the house. About 4 months later, things just started getting strange between us. I don't know exactly what happened. There was no cheating, no abuse, no anything like that.
Yeah.
Not to get too far into it, but she had some medication she wasn't allowed to take when she was pregnant. So,
Yeah.
so essentially, she said, "I want you out." There was a whole bunch of accusations. He put hands on me, whatever. Police talked to both of us, got both the stories, looked at the cameras, and said, that doesn't match up. And she actually ended up they asked her again the story, and they said, "Nah, that's not what happened. You said the first time." So they were like, "Yeah, sorry." So she packed up and left with the kid. Um, I knew where she was, but the family shielded the baby from me and everything.
Yeah.
And she said, "Well, if you want to see her, you've got to fight for her." So I said, "Absolutely."
Wow.
I ended up getting an attorney,
Mm-hmm.
which wasn't great. Not a big fan anymore, really. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
Went through, still accusations and everything, and I essentially ended up trying to do a step up program. It didn't quite take with the judge. She wanted a lot more hair follicle tests and all kinds of stuff. So I went through that for about a year. And still fighting I had her, Sunday and Monday during the days only, which wasn't a lot of time. So essentially we went through that. All my hair follicles were clear, all that good stuff. And I said, "I'm done with lawyers. You're fired." And I took it on myself. I started looking through paperwork, looking through old files, looking through court stuff, and seeing what I needed to do. So I fought myself and actually, excuse me, ended up in the end getting, of course, there's a lot more, in between, but just to save time, ended up with 50-50 custody. We have a 4-3-3-4 schedule. It's more like 4-3-4-3. I have her Sunday to Wednesday 1 week, and then Saturday to Wednesday the next. Mom, I think, has finally figured out that I'm never going to stop fighting. So essentially,
Wow.
we're rolling.
What a journey. What a journey.
Yeah,
What a journey. Okay.
It was about 2 years, of constant court battles, fighting, all of that stuff. And then I finally, in the end, I said, "Look, I'll take one more hair follicle test. And once it's clean, I don't want to hear about that anymore. It's obviously false, so stop." And of course, I went through that. It came back clear. And we moved forward. So we're actually doing really
Okay, let's go back to the beginning of obviously
Sure.
you got together, things were going great, and you say out of nowhere, was there signs in that relationship as it was going when it started going south, so to speak? Was there anything at all that you thought, was pressure on the relationship from the newborn? Was there a postnatal depression or anything like that? Or was there anything that you thought didn't quite red flag wise come up as it was heading towards it?
Yeah, we did. I noticed that there was more, both of us are more of not wanting to fight in each other's face and
Yeah,
yell and scream.
yeah,
So there was a lot of separation there. Before we moved into the house, right before Raven was born, I slept in another bedroom.
yeah.
We talked when we were passing by each other, and there was not much more communication, and I could just see a little bit of change coming, and I knew. And when I she told me right, I think a week or two before our daughter was born, that I don't want you in the room when she's delivered.
Wow.
And I
Wow.
was like, yeah, that's not going to work.
That's,
And she said,
yeah,
well, it's
that's
my
not right.
choice. She said, it's my choice. And we'll have, if I have to, I'll have security. And I said, cool, call the police too, because they're going to need to stop me from being in that room.
And
And she
what
let
was
go
her
of that.
reason? Sorry, what was her
I did.
reason?
What was that now?
What was her reason for not like you say up until that point you were sleeping in different bedrooms, stuff like that. Had you split up? Were you being co-parents or was it just the way the relationship went?
Yeah, I don't know. Honestly, I'd like to, because I don't know. I didn't.
Yeah,
I'm not always the best communicator,
yeah,
so
yeah, yeah,
I mean, I'm sure that didn't help. But the lack of the medication probably didn't help either.
yeah, yeah,
I think that was the easiest way for her to hurt me.
yeah,
So I think that's why it went that way when she said that. Now I realized, okay, we need to discuss this.
mm,
And she changed her mind beforehand. So that
good.
was good. And
Yeah,
actually, going through the delivery and everything was actually good. It was almost like when she was born, it brought us more
closer.
together,
Yeah,
what
yeah,
we lost.
yeah. And then where were the signs after she was born? Was there more red flags after that, or did you
No,
just suddenly one day just go, right, I think this is run its due course, or
we both focused on our baby a lot,
yeah,
and kind of ignored each other.
yeah,
Didn't really speak much. Didn't Unfortunately, didn't co-parent a whole lot. I think there was still a lot of feelings from before she was born that moved over. Plus, we had the stress of the
but
baby being born, moved into a
yeah,
new house.
yeah, yeah,
Um, you know, Dad's a motorcycle rider, so I'm out until 2 in the morning riding sometimes, and she's pregnant or with the baby. So,
yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot of stress factors that had a lot to do with it.
Of course. And so when she was born, I suppose sometimes having a baby, it can bandage up the issues that are going on because all your focus then is on just the baby, isn't it?
Right,
And even when they're not babies, even when you've got kids and the relationship isn't right, you can have a 5-year-old, a 10-year-old, you can put your focus on the kids and not have to deal with the issues that are going on between yourselves then, can't you?
right,
Um,
absolutely.
so as the little one was getting older, what happened then? Because obviously the communication went down to a point where you got told to leave.
Well, actually, it was very quick. It was when Raven, she was 4 months old.
Mm,
Um, I have a 24-year-old son. He's 25 now.
yeah.
He was renting one of the rooms in the house, and he was a little bit confused by it too, because one day that's when she said, "Hey, I was holding the baby." She said, "I need to breastfeed her." I said, "She's not crying for food. We're playing right now. Leave us be."
Mhm.
And I kind of turned away from her,
Mhm.
and she screamed, "Don't push me," and whatever. And that
Yeah.
was the part with the police. She
Okay. Yeah.
told them that I pushed her, and then when they asked her the story again, she said I turned around and my elbow rubbed her, and they said that's not the same. So,
Yeah.
and rather, I've been in those situations, and with my past, which we won't get into, it's
Yeah.
not horrible, but it's 20 years ago. So I was like, I know better. I know this is a bad road to go down.
Yeah.
And I was working as apartment maintenance manager. So I got into an apartment pretty quickly. My son,
Wow.
obviously, too, because she said she wanted both of us out. And yeah,
So
and she had
technically,
a daughter.
she made you homeless in a way.
Essentially, yeah, yeah.
Luckily, you worked somewhere because if you hadn't had that place, then you and your son could have been homeless on the street. So, and up until that point where the police came and stuff like that, up until that incident, was you just not communicating, sleeping in separate bedrooms, looking after the little one, and then suddenly that happened, which then I suppose that escalated from maybe a 4 or 5 to then a 10.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Yeah,
then
and I didn't see it as too bad, and maybe because we were focused, or I was focused on the girl,
yeah,
our baby. So, I may not have seen something that was there that,
yeah,
it is possible. We're all
of course.
blinded sometimes,
Yeah,
but
totally. Yeah.
yeah, it literally was about 3 or 4, and then all of a sudden, bang! And I was actually with my mom helping her at her house when the police called me, and I was like, they go, well, why did you leave the house? And I said, well, my son and I had plans to come over to my mom's.
Yeah.
I said, I'm right up the street. I can come right back. And he goes, no, there's no need for that. And I said, well, what do you want me to do? So the second time the story matched mine. So that's worked out. And she decided her best course of action was to pack and leave with the child. So,
Wow.
and there was some not so nice things back and forth, between both of us. When someone
Cool.
takes your kid, and
Yeah, yeah,
tells
yeah.
you you're going to be homeless and you can't see your kid,
Emotions rise.
so yeah, that was probably the bottom where I started the fight up the hill.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
to
yeah.
speak.
And I think I've been there from previously with my older daughter, and that moment where you say you're not allowed to see your kid, or you're not going to see your kid, and all that sort of it feels like your world just crumbles, but you've got no control either, have you? Um,
No.
and so you've lost your home. You've had to move into an apartment. You've had to get your son involved as well and get him home as well. And then suddenly you've got what was you thought was an okay-ish family. Now you've got nothing and no access to your daughter. How were you meant to react to it? Do you know what I mean? You're not going to go, oh, okay, then that's great. I'll see you in court. Do
Right.
you know what
Well,
I
and
mean?
I didn't, and it took at least 2 or 3 months before I realized that she said, you have to have a lawyer before you can see her. And I was like, well, wait a second. None of this was brought up the whole time I was moving into my apartment. So at least 2 months of I had no idea. And then I, messaged her and I said, hey, I'd like to start 50-50. She's breastfeeding. So I understand we need to work on that. But,
Yeah.
and she said, get a lawyer or else not at all. And I was like, okay. And she kind of comes from money and I work and she works, she's a hard worker but she did also have other money. So it was easier for her to go get the big high end lawyer and say, here you go. And I was sitting there going, gosh, we just moved into a new apartment.
Yeah.
And
And
yeah,
I think so many dads get in that situation where they've left the home, so they've got to find another outcome for the apartment when they were probably paying maybe 50-50 or paying mortgage or whatever on the house already. So then they've
yeah,
had to find another outcome, and then they're having to bust balls to get more money to pay for a solicitor. I know I spoke to a dad the other week, and like he was like, how am I meant to afford a solicitor when I'm doing 3 jobs just to learn to survive? Do you know
right.
what I mean? And so you've had to find the money then to find a solicitor. Did she think you couldn't find one, maybe? Or maybe did she know you were going to fight it? Did she think you should? Did she think you were going to fight it?
I'm not sure. I mean, she saw how I was with even her daughter from a previous relationship and my son. And I treated her daughter like mine. And so she knew I would like to think she knew that I would fight,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I also thought, I mean, she probably thought, well, he's not going to have the money to get an attorney.
yeah,
He's not going to have the money to get an apartment, things
yeah,
like that. Luckily, when you work in apartments, there was no deposit. They let me put the month rent up, and that was it. No background checks and all that, which would have been fine, but it just was
less
streamlined and
hassle,
easy.
less hassle.
Yeah, it was easy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
So you're in this apartment with your 25-year-old son. being told after maybe if I set myself up, she'll let me see my little one 50-50. That wasn't the case. She told you, right, go and get a lawyer, attorney, or whatever you needed to get. So then you was like, okay, fine. So up until that point, how I suppose let's be honest, were you back and forth arguing and stuff like over texts and all the rubbish that goes on in relationships, or was you quite calm and collective?
At that point, I knew that everything, one second, honey. I knew that everything that I said or did was recorded, so to speak. So I was like,
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, because she had already thrown out, accusations, things like that. So I was like, no, you know what? Yeah, there was, I don't know, how do you say it when you kind of poke, but without being noticed poking?
Yeah. I know what you
So
mean.
there
Yeah.
was a few
You're
chosen
passive
things that,
aggressive. You were being passive
yeah, were
aggressive.
exactly, that's the word.
Yeah.
And I was, there was a little bit of that because I wanted her to know that, this isn't acceptable just to do this.
Yeah.
And yeah, so, and of course, she found an attorney who believed it was in child's and mom's best interest to keep the dad out.
Cool.
And he was all for it.
Yeah.
And he didn't, he hated me because I spoke very clearly to him
Yeah.
and very, straightforward. And I asked him, I said, you have kids, right? And I said, what if your wife decided one day you couldn't see them? How would you feel? Would you be hostile? And he was like, well, not the way you're being. And I said, I haven't done anything but
Course.
said words.
It's always
So,
that way, and it not the way you're being. What are the
yeah.
ways there? Do you know what I mean? So okay,
Yeah.
so we've got the attorney, we've got the solicitor. You're about to go through the process, and obviously she's throwing all these allegations that you're this, you're that, you're this, you're that. I know when I had to have my hair follicles taken, there's allegations of this and allegations of that that you have to jump through hoops as a dad. Did you find the system was against you or was it for you?
Oh, they're totally against us. It was almost like defending myself, almost like I was on trial for something. And it was, what did you do 20 years ago on August 10th of, 1914 or whatever, and it's like,
So
come
when you were
on.
12-year-old and you pinched some penny sweets from the shop.
Yeah, yeah, and it was
Yeah.
it was just wild that and then like for instance, just one example in my when we did finally get the order, the attorney said or the judge said there was no reason for me because I carried insurance as well as she did for Raven, and the judge literally on the paperwork wrote down and said, um, "Dad can carry insurance if he wants to, but he doesn't have to because there's no benefit for the child to have two insurances for the parents or the child." And I was like, what? No benefit? If one doesn't pick it up, the other one does, and it's not out of pocket for parents, that's a benefit. And she wrote it down exactly word for word. And I go, wait a second. Even it would have even been better if she would have said, hey, dad's going to carry it and get credit for it, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and for the child support and everything. And she said, absolutely, you do not get credit for carrying that. And you don't have to. Of course, I said, oh, that's your order. I'm still keeping it. And I never
Yeah.
got credit for it,
Yeah.
but that was fine.
So at what point did you think, right, I need to get rid of my attorney because he ain't doing what he needs to be done? And how did you get the strength to say and the mental state to go, I'm going to do this myself?
So we were actually in the trial or whatever it is for to get the orders done. And I looked over at my attorney, and she was sitting there writing an email. So I told the judge, hold on one second, Your Honor, please. And I looked at my attorney and I said, what are you typing? And she said, oh, I'm sorry, I'm emailing another client. And I looked at her and I said, I'm paying you to defend me. And not once have you said you object to any of this frivolous stuff that's going on. And you're emailing another client. So we're both paying you. And then the judge got upset and she's like, Mr. Hammett, we need to continue. I said, well, am I supposed to continue without an attorney? Because I don't have one here doing anything. And and she goes, well, you have to deal with that after the court, whatever. So as soon as we hung up, in fact, I don't even think we got to hit end on the Zoom court because it was still Zoom at the
Okay.
time.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I looked over at her and I said, you're fired. I said, that's it. And yeah, she was like, well, we can do this and we can do that. And I said, no, 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 we are not.
I've heard stories of attorneys, lawyers. We've got solicitors that try and literally make this go as long as they can,
Yeah.
and not come to any ending or anything like that because obviously they get paid, don't they?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
they can hold it out and make it last as long as they can. They will, won't they?
Yeah. And then I also found out I needed paperwork or something that I was going to file. And I contacted the firm to get a hold of my attorney. And they said, oh, actually, she's been terminated from this firm. And I was like, so you guys even fired her. But
Wow,
yeah,
you can't have been that
I
good
was,
then at all.
yeah. So I was like, okay, well, and luckily at the time I started dating a very close friend of mine, and she was like a rock for me.
Yeah, yeah. How important was that having someone like that for you while you went through this process?
Oh, it was huge. Hold on just one second.
That's
Yes, baby. What? Why? Where's your clothes? Okay, can I finish this, please? Okay. Oh, probably because she chewed up some stuff she shouldn't have. Okay, let me finish this, baby, and I'll get with you. Okay, just hold on. Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, how
Yeah,
important was it to have
it is.
someone? Well,
I can't imagine men who have to go through this without family support. Luckily, my mom, she's very supportive of me because she knows that dad I am.
yeah.
And this girl I was with started hanging out with. We've been friends for like 9 years. So
Oh,
and it started actually, she was watching her when I'd go to work on the days that I had her.
yeah.
So I would get off work at like 3 o'clock, leave work early, lose hours just so I'd have some more time with my daughter. So
Wow.
she, and then doing the paperwork and all that stuff. Cause I mean, I'm a guy. You show me a
Yeah.
bunch of work. You show me, if you show me a video, I'll learn everything about it. You show me a bunch of words on paper and I'm
Yeah.
moving on.
You tell me about it, man. I ain't even reading it. I'm not touching it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying there. So how did you get the mental state to obviously you had this woman that was your rock, but mentally, because I know a lot, like you said, a lot of dads would probably have given up by now. Like losing the attorney, losing their solicitor, knowing that I'm gonna have to do another hair test or whatever like that. At what point did you say, well, I'm going to win, I'm going to beat this, I'm going to like, what pushed you to go continue and continue? Was it the fact that you access your daughter? Was it an inner drive to say, well, I'm the dad, man, I have rights and my purpose is to be the dad I need to be? What was it?
I think it's a combo plate with me. I looked at my son. His mom and I were young when we had him, and we both amicably, in fact, the judge, when her and I split up, the judge said, you know what? I condemn you or commend you guys because we both sat at the same table in front of the judge telling him what we were going to do. And
Wow.
he was like, most people will not sit at the same table.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And so I looked at him and how he is now, and um, essentially seeing her grow up. And, I just looked at everything as not the end, but just a bump in the road.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Because it's so easy just
yeah.
to go, forget it.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
give
yeah,
up.
totally. Yeah, yeah. And I think a lot of dads feel like that, even though they don't want to. I think I spoke to one dad a few years back, a few weeks back, sorry, and he ended up in a one bed sit by himself, having to go through the court system. And I think the darkest moments, you were quite lucky that you had someone that you could probably talk to, bounce ideas off, offload. But the darkest times are when the dads are by themselves, aren't they? And they've
Yeah.
got no one around. Like you said, family is so important. Having your mom around, having your partner around, having your son around. Um,
Yeah.
so many dads sometimes are locked in by themselves that they see no way out of their own box, do they? And
No, that's for
it's
sure.
it's a scary thing. So you went through the system, you won, obviously, and got the end result that you wanted, or 50-50, so to speak.
Yeah.
What impact do you feel that's had on your daughter? Do you feel like the impact of not being around, has that had much impact, or does she not know about it? Or how
Oh
do you
no,
feel?
she excuse me. She is daddy's girl.
Yeah,
Um, I think that most kids that don't have a dad,
hmm yeah. It's you know what, mate? I feel you, man. When I took my little one to bed sometimes and they say good night, man, you can just cry sometimes, can't you? It's and everything you've done has just been for your daughter.
yeah, and I grew up without one.
Yeah.
I think that's what made me be the dad I am
Yeah. Yeah.
because I didn't want that for them.
Yeah. Yeah. You didn't want that.
Even if we weren't together,
Yeah.
she
You didn't,
knows that
yeah.
she always has me.
You didn't want to repeat the pattern.
I'm okay, babe.
You didn't want to repeat that pattern.
I'm not sad. I'm happy. Yeah, I'm trying happy. Okay, let me finish. So, that was the big thing with me is not wanting them to go through that.
Yeah, yeah. So, and
And
look at the end result.
yeah, and she is kind of a little poke for me is that actually she makes a little more money than I do, so she actually has to pay me support. Which I don't really care about. I put it in an
Yeah.
account for her. You know, it's whatever is some little amount. Now I was paying $1,000 a month to her in support, even though we were moving towards 50-50. So and she pays me like 200 a month, and I'm like, what was the point of this? I
Yeah.
mean, I don't care. Just and I told her, I said, the bad thing is, I told her mom, I said, listen, if I give you $100,000, will you let me have 50-50 right now? And she said, absolutely. So it was,
Money.
a money grab,
Yeah.
keep the daughter, so I
It's
was like, but we actually, you know, now I think because I'm not going to give up ever, she knows I'm never going to give up. And now we're in a place where I don't have to. It's all set and it goes smooth. We don't even really speak to each other. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
when she was a baby, it was kind of awkward because, like, I'd
Of
have a
course.
friend with me or somebody when I'd pick her up, and she'd
Yeah.
go, in fact, my attorney was on one of the calls before, and I said, "Here, listen to this when I pick her up." So I went to go, pick her up, and she would walk to the back of her car, set the car seat on the ground, and then basically run back into her car, and then I would go and pick her up in the car seat and put her in my car and drive away. And my attorney's like, "Did you get her?" And I go, "Yeah, she's in the car now." And she goes, nothing was said. And I said, nothing at all. And
Yeah.
I had, I mean, besides her keeping my daughter, I didn't really have any other kind of,
You didn't need to say anything,
uh,
really, do you?
no, I mean, it was, and we're still like that, she's in school half time now, half days, because she's in pre-K.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So I take her in the morning, Wednesday morning, and then she picks her up in the afternoon. So we never see each other then. We only see each other either
Yeah.
Saturday morning or Sunday. And that's when she opens the door. Won't even come out to the driveway to bring her out or anything. So, which
I
is
have
fine
to,
by me. Let's avoid the conflict. I'm
exactly.
good.
Exactly. I have to say though, like from one of the many dads that I've interviewed and spoken on my podcast, it's nice to hear that there's been result at the end of the story. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because for so many times, like dads, like, and sometimes I haven't put the podcast up because like dads have like said like I'm not seeing my kid, and allegations have been made and all these sort of things, and you're just like, I'm always stunned. Would men do the same if it was the other way around?
Right.
And that's
And I don't believe in that. I don't believe, like I said, even if I would have seen my dad, once
yeah,
a week or
yeah,
twice or three times a month, I would have been fine with that. And
yeah,
so I know the effect of kids
yeah,
when they don't have both of them in the same household or not.
yeah, yeah,
There
yeah,
is an
yeah, yeah.
effect.
Yeah, totally. And I think as much as you can, if you can co-parent like you're doing now with a 50-50, that's better than not one involved at all, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And I tell you what, hats off for you, man, because you're an inspiration to many dads that fought the system that's so against dads and you still won. Do you know what I
And I
mean?
don't understand that. I've never understood. I've heard other people's stories. I've got friends that have the same kind of stories, and because we attract to each other,
Yeah.
and it's so crazy to listen to their stories because I'm like, hey, what? Why is it? Why is it like that? I mean, it's like courts and people use their personal opinions or maybe even their personal experiences,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we just get,
Yeah.
it's like mother knows best. Well, you not
You know what?
always.
I think I read something the other day, and it's a different talk for a different podcast. But I read something the other day, and it was about in the 60s and 70s, the government paid single moms to be single,
Right.
and
Yeah, that makes sense.
there was a massive agenda about like if you're a single mom, we'll pay you more. I think it was the 60s or 70s or 70s or 80s, and it was really funny. I was in America a few weeks back, and I was chatting to a woman in a gun store in North Carolina, and she told me about this agenda that went on in the 60s and 70s, and I was like, it makes perfect sense. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? The
Well,
system.
and as far as I'm concerned, sorry, as far as I'm concerned, the whole system is a money grab.
Oh, totally.
Because you have mediators you have to hire, you have attorneys you have to hire. We
Yeah.
had to go through an investigator to tell us how we should have our family structure, and it was crazy because even he said, "Hey, dad's completely engaged." Playing with the kid, having fun, and mom just kind of sat and watched the kid play. And I was like, he even said it to you. He said that dad is engaged in playing,
And
and
yeah,
you still,
still, yeah. I remember,
yeah. So it's
I remember,
horrible.
I remember having mediation and being judged as a dad,
Yeah,
and then I
yeah,
remember going to a contact center with high earning, high value dads. There were policemen in there, lawyers in there, and you had to be watched with your kid for 2 hours every other week. And I remember
yeah,
thinking to myself, "There's no women in here.
yeah,
There's no women in this contact center. Like, where's all the women?"
yeah.
Oh, and I was young. I was like 20, 20, I was 21, 22 at the time. My daughter's like 19 now. But I remember
Yeah.
thinking to myself, like, this system isn't right. You know what I
Yeah, and
mean?
our investigator, when because we had to do one where it was me and the baby, and then her and the baby, and then her and I without the baby. So when we were sitting there, going back and forth, every time I said something that he didn't like, he would say, "No, no, no, stop, no, no," and he would basically stop me from speaking my mind, and then she would just go on these rants, and I go look at him. And there was one time it probably didn't help me. I looked at her and I said, "Are you going to let her continue or are you going to stop her like you did me?" And I was just like, and I have no filter sometimes, or most
You're a
times.
man. You're a man.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't hide those things, and I think that's helped with raising my daughter too, because she's very outspoken. She'll say exactly what she thinks, exactly what she feels, and I encourage that because I don't want her to grow up like all these other adults who are scared to say what they feel or
Yeah,
think.
yeah, totally, man. Totally, totally. I have to say, mate, you've been a breath of fresh air, man, in this podcast because I
I
really do
appreciate it.
feel you're going to give a lot of hope to a lot of dads who watch this. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I hope so. And I mean, my biggest thing to tell anybody is don't give up. If you really want it,
Yeah, you got to fight. You got to fight.
for sure.
And I can tell you that I can tell you, man. I feel it when you when you talk and when you even that moment you just had a few minutes ago, I feel it, man, because there's certain times when you look at your daughter and it just makes you want to cry for happiness, isn't it? You know what I mean? Just happy tears, man. And I can see she's an asset to you, man. So well done, man. Well done
For sure.
for fighting the good fight, as they say. Well done for
Hey,
fighting.
I appreciate you letting me get
No,
it out.
nah, man. I thank you very much for being on the podcast, man. I appreciate your story and sharing. And I just want to give you one big piece of advice. Keep going. Keep
Oh yeah.
going. Because there's a lot of dads
Well,
out
we're
there.
kind of the great part is we're out of the woods now.
Yeah,
We're cruising right along. You know, there's things that she wants that I don't care for, and it's not worth little things. Let them go.
yeah,
I'm not going to
totally,
fight about it.
totally, man. There's no
It's not
point.
worth
No
it.
need. You've won. You've
No.
won. So there's no need.
Yeah.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So, mate, I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you so much for being on the Tar Dad podcast, man. I appreciate your honesty. I appreciate your authenticness that you've brought to this. And I have to say, mate, I can see the relationship you've got. You've got a great bond. So have a fantastic day, man. I'll speak to you soon.
All right. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thanks, man. Take care. Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.